As I said, Alabama goes into Purdue this Friday. That game is going to be happening in Mackey Arena. And this is not the same Purdue team that Alabama played up in Toronto last season. Alabama played, Purdue and Toronto last season, and then both of these teams made the Final Four this last season, and neither team is the same. I will say that Alabama returns its star player from last season in Mark Sears, as well as its, kind of number 2 in Grant Nelson, whereas Purdue loses Zach Edey, of course, National Player of the Year, off to the NBA. And they do return Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, and Kaufman Wren. So they do have some guys returning that contributed on last season's team, but they're going to be without Zach Edey. They're going to be without Mason Gillis. They're going to be without, some of the guys which played key roles in that game last season. Lance Jones, all these guys played key roles in that game last season and were key contributors to Purdue overall, right? But when you look at the Alabama-Purdue game that happened last season, and we'll talk a little bit about it, kind of in lead up to this one, because obviously this isn't the first, that game, Alabama and NATO, it's play Matt Painter, and you see some of the things that you see out of a Matt Painter offense. You see a huge and very, very high assist percentage. Currently Purdue is 14th in the country in assist to made field goal percentage. They do a very good job of assisting on made baskets. They're a very, very efficient offense. They're currently set at 5th in the country in effective field goal percentage. That is a Matt Painter offense. In general, his defense has never been as good as his offense. And part of the reason why his defense was better the last few years is he had a 7-4 guy down low. And you could even argue part of the reason why his offense was at its efficiency was because he had the 7-4 guy down low. And they had played more of an inside-out game where the ball went to Zach Edey, and as people collapsed down on him, he was able to spray out to shooters, or, even if a Braden Smith was able to, the guys outside were able to get more open because they knew that you can't help off of Zach Edey, right? You just couldn't, right? You had to keep the bodies on Edey. And so the physical presence that Edey was and the amount of minutes in which he played, in this game last season, he plays 36 minutes, and that's a huge point, right? Edey played so many minutes, a lot of Alabama fans would be like, hey, he was fouling, he was doing this, he was doing that. I agree, but they weren't calling him, and so he played the 36 minutes, right? At the end of the day, he played the minutes. And when he plays the minutes, then you have to contend with him for those minutes. And that was something that definitely Alabama struggled with last season. He ends up having 35. Now, part of that, he was in Toronto, and they were feeding him in his hometown. He went 11 of 11 from the line. But the other guy that had a very, very successful game is the one that is back this season, is Braden Smith. The difference is Braden Smith is now the guy for Purdue. Last season he was a supporting cast to Zach Edey, versus this season he has to be the guy. And the question is, does Purdue have the supporting cast now around Braden Smith to support him being the guy? You have Fletcher Lawyer, which at moments last season did a really good job, but he obviously has an increased role this season. Kaufman Wren the same way. He had a decent role last season, but now he's a much bigger role. Everyone is just playing a much bigger role than they were on the team last season, and the question is, are they going to be successful in doing that? At moments this season, the answer would seem to be yes, and at moments the answer would seem to be no. If we look at their Yale game, which is the most recent game they've played, and the best competition they've played to this point, Braden Smith has 22 points. He goes 4 of 8 from deep. He has 9 rebounds and 6 assists. That kind of what you're going to expect out of Braden Smith. He kind of does a little bit of everything. He had 8 assists in the Alabama game. He has 6 assists in this one. He is somebody that does a very good job at finding the open guy, and as well as making his own shots, right? He has 22 points in that game and 5 steals. In my opinion, the the key assignment, and this is not crazy, but the key assignment is going to be on Braden Smith. I'm going to be curious at what Alabama does to defend Braden Smith. I know Mark Sears has done a decent job at on-ball defense, but he's not going to be able to do it alone. I know Latrell Wrightsville does a good job at on-ball defense. You're going to need a good game out of LeBaron Philon. You're going to need a good game out of Aiden Holloway. I could even see if we put, if Smith starts doing well, we could even put like a Darion Reed and put a bigger body on him that has a much bigger wingspan. I'm curious to see how Alabama defends Braden Smith and what they decide to do and how they want to make him uncomfortable in this game, because really the offense does flow through him, and he is the key focal point of the offense, right? If you let him get going and let him get those assist numbers and shots off, he can really make you pay. Right, and in the home crowd, in the home environment, he's somebody that I expect is going to be ready to go. Fletcher Lawyer is another guy that, again, has done a good job. Alabama last season when they played him, Lawyer went 0 of 3 from deep, 0 of 2 from the field. His only points were from the free throw line, and he had 3 turnovers. So in general, he did not have a great game. However, he is a very good player. He's 6'5". Last season, he shot 44% from deep. So far this season, he shot 75%, 9 of 12. He is somebody that does a very good job shooting the ball, and Alabama will need to match up with him. Again, how does Alabama defend him is another question. Alabama will have length on most of anybody they're going to play this season. That is the one benefit to Alabama's team, is they are long at most positions, and that's going to help when it comes to a defensive perspective, right? It's the big thing that we've talked about this offseason is when you bring in Cliff, when you bring back Grant, when you bring in a guy like Darion Reed, when you bring in LeBaron Philon, these guys are long for their positions, and that really helps from a defensive perspective. And I think in this game, you're going to see that, right? Purdue does have a 7-2 guy that's going to be their center. So Cliff is going to have, somebody, I don't want to say more his size, but kind of more his size compared to what he has played against thus far through the first 3 games. We've talked about how the last 3 teams have just been undersized in the forward position. Purdue, has the 7'2" Will Berg. They also bring 2 guys off the bench, 6'10" and 6'11". Kaufman Renz, their other forward, at 6'9". The matchup with him and Grant Nelson's, I think, going to be one to watch in this game, who's able to have more success. And I think in this one, a very key point to this game is going to be rebounding. Yale dominated Purdue on the glass. They got 11 offensive rebounds to Purdue's 5. And if Alabama can rebound at the level that they're capable of, and you last game you saw a lot of that out of Grant Nelson, you saw that out of Cliff Omori, you see that out of a few different positions. Aiden Sherrill can do it. Mo D's very commonly a great offensive rebounder. But that is the thing in which the place where I think Alabama can have the most success. And part of the reason why obviously Alabama can have the most success in that is similarly to what we know is off the offensive rebound is one of the best chances to get rhythm threes, right? When you can get the offensive rebound, the defense is in a scramble drill, you kick out to an open shooter and you get a rhythm 3, right? So I think that's going to be a real key to success in this game. It's a place where Purdue has struggled so far this season against some of the better competition they've played. Like I said, I think the key to this game is going to be how you defend Braden Smith. I think it's also going to be, how Purdue tries to figure out who the other if Alabama is able to partially take away Braden Smith or at least limit him, what do the other supporting cast look like, right? Because I think it was very simple last season. You just threw it into Zach Edey and let him go to work. And this season, they're gonna have to run much more of an offense, much more of a, just obviously Painter can do it, absolutely, but it's just going to be a completely different style than what they're used to, right? When you look at if we flip over the KenPom page, when you look at Purdue, they have quite a few green, bright green that jump off the page at you, and that's offensive efficiency, right? They're currently fourth in the country. Alabama sits at sixth. They're as I said, they're fifth in effective field goal percentage. They do not get blocked very often. They currently sit at seventh in the country at getting their shots blocked. I do think that they have not faced as good of a shot blocker as Cliff Amori or even Grant Nelson at the 4. So I do think Alabama could have a little bit of success with that, but I obviously don't think that's going to be a huge impact on the game as a whole. And then the big thing is that they assist on most of their made field goals. And we've seen that for years out of Matt Painter's teams. They did a big job of that last season when they assisted on 73% of their made baskets. This is a very common thing with Matt Painter's teams. But, trying to make them create off the dribble is going to be a goal for Alabama, right? Not getting lost in switches, not getting lost with open shooters is going to be the goal to this game. And it would not shock me if Nate Oates tries a few different things out there from a defensive perspective and seeing what works and seeing who works best on who, right? I think this is going to be a game that's going to test our defense. I think that Alabama has the guys and the length to be able to play with Purdue, of course. I think that Alabama is going to have better athletes than Purdue. We saw that last season. By and large, Alabama had better athletes than Purdue. This was a game in which Mark Sears just dominated last season from Alabama's perspective. If we talk about how Zach Edey and Braden Smith are the only players in double figures for Purdue, Alabama only has 3 guys in double figures, and Mark Sears is the only one with more than 12. He has 35 points on 8 of 16 from deep, right? I'm sure that Matt Painter is going to be trying to draw up things on how to stop Mark Sears from going to 8 of 12 from deep against him, right? This is a game in which Latrell Wrightsell went 3 of 6 from deep, but he was kind of working into the system at that point. And again, it just was a much different layout because we were going against Zach Edey, right? So you can take away some things from Purdue, but it's tough to take away everything from that game last season because the way in which the game was played was so different due to the gravitational player in which you had in Zach Edey on the floor, right? It obviously impacted the fouls from Alabama's perspective. Alabama has Nick Pringle and Mo D both foul out. Rylan Griffin has 4. Alabama had 24 fouls to 15 for Purdue, which led to 28 free throws to 14 for Alabama, right? Obviously, that's a huge difference in the game. It was a 6-point game last year. I expect this to be a fairly high-scoring game. But, I do think that Alabama does have the ability to win this game. I think that Alabama probably will win this game and will get off to a start in the non-conference. My prediction for this one is, first off, I think that Alabama is going to try to bump up the pace as much as possible. Obviously, Purdue is going to try to slow it down. That's been a staple of Matt Painter's offense for years, in that he does not like to play fast. Currently this season, they're 285th in the country. Last season, they were 218th, so they're even a little slower this year than they were last year so far this year. Obviously, it's early with just 3 games under the belt, but this is a situation where I think that Alabama can win this game, and I am going to predict them to win by a score of 86 to 81. I think that it is a close game. I think that Alabama has the defense to win this game. I do think that if this game was either at home or on a neutral floor for Alabama, that the score would be a little higher. Obviously, you have to give some additional bump due to being just in Mackey Arena and being on the road for Alabama on a Friday night in the lights. So that is, that's what I would say. I'm going to say 86-81 Alabama. I do think that they win this game, but I do think that it's going to be close. And it's going to be something that you need to watch out on. If you're curious for a player-by-player breakdown from a shooting splits perspective. And, I'll also have some videos. Please follow me over on Twitter. I will put out the thread the morning of this game. I'll have it written up and put it out the morning of the game. So if you are interested in seeing just different shooting splits and stuff on the players and a little bit more specific player breakdowns, check me out over there.